Good evening, everyone. Welcome to week 2 of Whole Farm Planning, the Sustainable Small Farming and Ranching course. This week's topic is resource evaluation. This is Colette D. Phelps, and I'll be your moderator today. I just want to go over some webinar tips. I do this at the beginning of each webinar. I want to encourage you to close all of the other programs on your computer. This will really help the webinar run better for you and will help eliminate sound delays and page turning delays that might be related to the speed of your computer system or your mobile device. And if you're running into any problems with your sound, there is a call-in number provided in your welcome email. If you choose to use the telephone to listen to the webinar, please mute your computer sound. That's going to make it a better experience for you. And you can type questions in for speakers or for help into the chat question box. And if you type those in during the presentation, the presenters and I will try to do some of the response as typed messages, and others will do orally during the question and answer time. So feel free to do that prior to question and answer so that we can go ahead and start that segment of the webinar smoothly. I also wanted to let you know that I'm in Moscow, Idaho. Our presenter, Cinda Williams, is in Troy. Melissa Lines is in Harvard, and Jessica McAleese is in Salmon. So we're all in remote areas, and what we've learned is that depending upon our internet speed in our area, there might be a slight 3 to 5 second delay in changing the slides. So please be patient with the technology as we go through this. And for those of you that completed the post-webinar survey last time, we really appreciated your comments, and we will take into consideration making sure that we're not chatting about technology problems as we go through the webinar tonight. So our first speaker tonight is Cinda Williams. Cinda is an area extension educator with the University of Idaho, focusing on community food systems. Cinda?
Thank you, Colette. Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be with you again tonight. I wanted to say that I've been reading some of your assignment number 1 and have enjoyed actually getting to know your backgrounds and what some of your the interaction between you. It looks like, and you're looking forward to meeting each other in person, and that's really good. It's doing just what we hoped it would. And I think I responded to one person, but I haven't had time to respond to everybody, but I hope to interact more as I can, and I would encourage the other instructors also to interact, and maybe they have been. So tonight we're going to focus on resources, are doing an inventory of our on-farm resources, our natural resources, our human resources, financial, and we've sorry. Hold on for a second. Okay. Apologize for technology. We just practiced this and then it didn't work. Anyway, we're going to look at all of those things. The important thing about evaluating your resources to me is to keep your mind open about the possibilities of the different options that you might have. Look at your resources. Not necessarily do they fit what you have in mind to do or that you're currently doing, but look at your resources and how they give you the opportunity to do whatever you might choose. So everybody kind of comes into the class thinking, if they're not farming yet, that they have a plan to do this. And all I'm saying is that you might find that your resources fit with something else. And so keep an open mind about that as you go through this. In our next week, we will talk about enterprise selection, and one of the key things is to pick an enterprise that matches your resources. So that's one reason why we go through this inventory first. So we're not just talking about the physical resources on the farm, we're talking about the human capital that you have to contribute. And this isn't just yourself, but this is your family members, your potential partners, whoever might be involved in the farm or have be a stakeholder, as they might say, are the people that we need to include. So considering everybody on your farm, we might look at something like this. This is not an assignment. I don't have this form out there for you, although I could put it together for you if you wanted. But this is something that I put together to show you kind of what you might do to evaluate your human capital. And you can see across the top we've got all of the people that are involved. You may have an uncle, you may have a father or a brother-in-law or somebody, adult relative that might help you out, or you might have children that are wanting to be involved in some aspect of the farm. And so you kind of go through and assess all of the skills, background, education, all of that, and write down everything that you can think about, that the skills you have. Do you have farm background, anything along that line, any college degree. And then availability is important because, if you're looking at the possibilities in farming, when you're available is very, very important for what the particular enterprise that you choose. Actually, I always think of Janie Burns, who's now raises sheep and poultry in southern Idaho, and she started out as a vegetable producer. She found out over time that she really wanted to have something that was spread out over the year rather than having something that took her time so intensely in the summer. And so that was one of her decision making that she made based on the availability of her time in terms of seasons and that. So that's a important thing to look at. Of course, your interest in the particular enterprise is really important, and we'll talk more about that as we go along. And your physical aptitude. Not everybody in your family or your farm family are going to be equally physically fit, and that means that they may be more appropriate in certain tasks than others. Your financial resources are, of course, really important. What you need to be looking at is your current finances, and of course that's pretty depressing to some of us. We realize that we don't have all the finances that we need to get started in our business, and I know that Melissa and Jessica will share some of their experiences in financial and all of these resources with you. But it's good to get a reality check of what you have, and then when you decide on the enterprise you're going to go into and you look at the costs of getting that started, that's when you can start to make a plan on, okay, I need to save this much. I can do certain things in years 1 through 3. Some things will need to wait till later. The other thing you need to look at is your potential for loans and credit. You can get I don't know how many of you have gotten your credit report, but you can get your annual credit report and to see, what your credit status is and how likely you are to get credit. There are several kinds of loans that we're going to talk about, and we'll talk about that, I think, in week 7 when we talk about finances. But look now at, what might be some loan possibilities, and think about how you might fit into that. Who could you borrow from? Do you have to go to Farm Service Agency, or do you have relatives, or what are some of your options? And then look at your natural resources. So we're talking land, the slope of the land, the vegetation, the water. Is it a pond, a creek that runs through? And we're talking about climate. And we will talk about each of these in a little bit more depth. Before we go on, though, it's time for a poll. I want to find out a little bit about if you've done a soil test.
Okay. So for those of you that are new to the polls, I launched the poll. Have you done a soil test on your current property in the last 3 years? And you can just click yes, no, or not applicable. And on my side, I can see the percentage of people that are on that are voted, and so when it gets about complete, then I'll show you the results. So right now, about 80% of the participants have voted, so I'll just give it a couple more seconds. I did learn last week that if you are on your iPhone, that you're unable to vote. So, okay, I'm going to close the poll and share the results. So, the majority of folks have not done a soil test, 60%. About 30% have, and for 7 of us, it's not applicable tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and hide the results, Cinda, and give it back to you.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's interesting, and it's something that you can be thinking about doing. Whether you're raising animals or crops, I mean, even if you're raising animals, you are raising grass to feed your animals, and so soil test is important to give you a baseline of where your soil nutrient level is, and where what your organic matter is, what your pH is in your soil. And we'll talk more about soil when we get to crop production, but I wanted you to be thinking about it ahead of time and looking at it as a resource that you have. It's something that you can work with and build the soil as you go, but it's something that you want to be looking at. Our slope and aspect of the land are also really important. Do you have south-facing aspect? Do you have a real steep property? You know, that's going to affect the choices that you have in what you can do.